All right, it is the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining today's webinar, Creating Value, Understanding the ROI of Your Information Governance Project. We appreciate you joining us today. The first thing I would like to do is take a moment and introduce our speakers. My name is Maya Wooldridge, and I'm in business development here at Gimmal. Today, I'm joined by our key speaker, Chief Executive Officer, Mark Johnson. Now, before we get started, I've got a few housekeeping items to go through. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit them in the Q&A section on your screen, and we will answer as many as we have time for at the end of our presentation. There will also be a poll question that you will see pop up, so please keep an eye out for that. And as always, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know so we can assist you. To kick things off, I'd like to take the next couple of slides to tell you a little bit about Gimmal and how we can help you take control of your information with our suite of solutions. Founded in 2002, Gimmal is a records, information management, and governance software company that helps you balance the value your information provides with the risk it also presents. Whether you are trying to discover information in unstructured data sources, migrate from legacy systems, or comply with policies across multiple repositories, Gimmal can help you achieve your information governance goals. We have a client success team and global network of partners that deliver solutions in conjunction with key partners like Microsoft and SAP. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive solutions include migration, file analysis, electronic and physical records management, and document management for SAP. For those of you who are not new to our webinars, you may have noticed a slight name change in our products. They are the same solutions, just with more simplified names for easier reference. In more recent news, Gimmal did announce the acquisition of Sherpa Software last week, and so we're adding on to the full data governance and e-discovery capabilities to the Gimmal Discover product suite. Now I'd like to go ahead and hand it off to you, Mark, to begin our presentation.
Awesome, thank you, Maya. And for background, first of all, if there's any issues with the audio quality, please let Maya know. I'm up in Pittsburgh visiting the Sherpa team, and I'll just say it's a really good combination because culturally, they have the same values that we do and the same orientation towards client service, so it's a really good fit. Now, a little bit about me and why I'm doing. Normally, you don't see a CEO doing a webinar. But I'm a recovering CFO. I've been CFO of 4 different software businesses and have evaluated or been presented evaluations of hundreds of IT projects. And when I got to Gimmal, we were having conversations about what value does records management provide? And the answer I always got back was, well, there's really no ROI. It's really a nice to have, not a need to have until something blows up or until some emergency happens or somebody gets sued and or some citizen wants information, right? And a couple of years ago, we had a client that actually shared with us how they thought about value. And so that really stimulated this entire conversation about how do we convey value to our clients. Next slide, please. All right, so today, I'm not intending to get all wonky or financy on you. What I want you to walk away from is 3 basic concepts. What is ROI? How do we think about it collectively? How is your CFO going to think about it? And how do I urge you all to think about ROI? And then as you're building out your business case, what do you look for? Where do you look for areas of savings? Okay, next slide. Okay, so ROI, this is a relatively simple concept. It is a return on the investment, not just a return of your investment, but the entire point of investments in infrastructure initiatives is to make things bigger, faster, stronger, cheaper, because we're all accountable to somebody else, whether it's our constituents, our shareholders, our citizens, depending on your organization, we are all responsible to somebody else. And so we need to make responsible decisions. Second, I think this is really sort of important. ROI is a standard way to compare competing projects, because as much as you'd like your project to be the only one, it is not the only one being presented for consideration. And finally, there are various measurements that are standard that calculate ROI, whether it's a return on cash flow or just what the relative interest rate is. The inputs are generally the same. It's the costs that you are incurring versus the value you expect to receive over time. Next slide, please. So why is this important? This is a bit of motherhood and apple pie. So first, we all are, I mentioned earlier, we're fiduciary responsibilities. In other words, we're responsible to somebody else for the money that we spend. And if you're a public agency of federal government, local, state government, you're accountable to your citizens. If you're a public company, you're accountable to your shareholders, but at the end of the day, we're all accountable to someone. Second is we need to be able to allocate scarce resources, and scarce resources can be financial resources, it can be personnel resources, and we need to be able to understand and agree that we're allocating all these resources wisely based on objective measurements, non subjective measurements. Third, and I think this is personally, as a recovering CFO, I think this is the most important. It creates organizational alignment. And what do I mean by that? Is if you've got a project and you know that it's going to offer certain benefits, whether they're tangible or intangible, the important thing is we're all aligned on what those benefits are and how we're going to try to measure them. Because I've always viewed investment business cases as a commitment. You're promising to deliver certain results in return for funds, resources, et cetera, to do your project. And then fourth, and I think this is probably, in some organizations, this is the most important, but in some organizations, personally, I think this is the least important, is your CFO or somebody's got to sign off on this. So if you don't have I can't tell you how many times somebody has come to me and with an investment proposal that's not going to save any money, and I've turned them away to help them, tell them to go think about how are they going to actually improve the business with this investment. So without demonstrable ROI, somebody's less likely to sign off on the project. Next slide, please. All right, this is where we get into the algebra. And actually, I'm not going to go through all these in detail. You can read through, but there's sort of 3 or 4 key ROI measurements that most finance people understand. One is just a simple, it's a ratio. What's the total return relative to the cost? And then you get into various measurements on cash flow. And it gets a little bit more complex as you go from DCF, which is discounted cash flow, to IRR, but they all focus on the time value of money. And I think what I would want to convey to you is each of these measurements has strengths and weaknesses. It's not important that you, as the project sponsor, needs to understand what these differences are and what the strengths and weaknesses are. I think what you need to understand is your finance people are going to look at this a little bit differently than you're going to look at this. Next slide, please. Okay, breaking it down in English a little bit. In order to calculate ROI, there's some things you basically need to know. First of all, how much is it going to cost? And it doesn't need to be a precise, I'm going to spend down to the penny. It's just, or maybe it does in your organization, but generally speaking, how much is it likely to cost and where are you going to earn a return? And that return can generally be in the form of incremental revenue, though in information governance, I don't really see that as an opportunity. But there are certainly opportunities for cost reductions and cost avoidances and process efficiencies. We had a federal client tell us once that FOIA requests used to take hours, and now they take minutes. And that's the benefit of a strong information governance program. And that helps you avoid costs in terms of future hiring, but helps you be more responsive, more efficient in terms of your service levels. Third, this is where it gets a little bit financy, right? We have what we call hard cost versus soft cost savings. Hard cost savings are things you can discretely measure. I'm not buying, I can decommission this software, I can decommission this server, I can reduce these costs. These are discretely measurable. Soft cost savings are, well, we're going to be better, faster at our process, and that will result in savings to the organization in terms of efficiencies, but it's very difficult to measure or to attribute the savings to this particular project. And then there's squishy areas in between, cost avoidances. If we do this, we will not have to go buy this server. We will not have to go upgrade the software. And so it's hard to say, well, if you give me $1 million, I'm not going to have to spend $1 million, right? Because there's that decision to spend $1 million down the road is a different decision, and your CFO is going to handle that decision differently. Next slide, please. All right, so let's go into some of the components that we've identified in our information governance products and solutions and areas of savings. Next slide, please. All righty, so we've gone through with each of our products and have created investment business cases. And we've worked with clients to develop those business cases based on actual inputs and assumptions from our clients. And so here's some of the areas where, as you're looking to implement your information governance project, you might want to look. And if you start on the left side, this is, again, motherhood and apple pie. You've got improved compliance posture, right? And that's all great and well and good, in particular for public entities, right? But if you're a private company, improved compliance posture only really matters if something happens, if you get sued or if something blows up, right? Otherwise, you're spending money in anticipation of something not happening. Democratization of data. I love that word, democratization of data. We're going to make data available to whomever needs it, whenever they need it, wherever they need it, right? That's a process efficiency and soft cost savings, absolutely. Reduce risk and legal liability, right? We're not going to be fined if we do this. Well, again, it's a bit of a blackmail approach to savings identification, and in some industries and sectors, it is a real possibility, but in some industries and sectors, it's not, right? So it can be in that middle area. Improve data security, right? In this particular day and age, especially with the pipeline hack that was announced last weekend, data security is going to be an increasingly important area for process efficiencies and soft cost savings. I love this one, efficiency. It's going to be easier to find and to manage our information. Great. How does that translate into actual savings, right? And then simplified IT architecture. Great. So the flow chart and the process diagram is going to look cleaner. What does that mean in terms of savings to the business or to the organization? And as you move to the right side of the chart or of the slide, these are actual hard dollar savings. So reduced migration costs. If you have clean data and you're moving from a legacy system, say, to SharePoint Online, if having cleaner data will make that cost lower. If you have hires because of the efficiencies that you no longer need to make, that's a cost avoidance or a savings. If you're migrating, if you have a legacy system and you have SharePoint Online and you move to SharePoint Online, obviously you can get rid of your legacy ECM maintenance and upgrades. And that can be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per year. And then finally, reduce IT costs. If you're in the cloud versus on-premise, then you don't need to pay for on-premise storage and servers and enterprise software licensing. Those are things that you can actually quantify, saying, if we move to Microsoft 365, we no longer have to pay those costs. And those are absolutely quantifiable. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier that we have business cases for each of our product areas. And if you take all of the elements of savings from hard costs to soft costs and for all of our products, this is where you can actually potentially see savings and efficiencies by implementing our products. And so I mentioned earlier, we do have business case templates and we do have people who are educated in them, and we can help walk you through how your projects can generate a return. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the one I love. As a recovering CFO, when we were talking about putting the webinar together, we talked about, well, what do you say to your CFO? And then the other side of the coin is, what don't you say to your CFO? And so here are the things, the phrases that will resonate. We will save money by ... What I mean by that is, we will save money by doing this initiative. We will save money by not having this legacy ECM maintenance and upgrades. We will avoid future cost increases. In other words, we will not have to hire future employees. We will not need to buy additional capacity. We will not need to do this. We will be more responsive to our constituents. And as a citizen of the United States, I would love for our government to be more responsive. And a citizen of Houston, Texas, I'd love for our governments to be more responsive. And if you can take FOIA requests from hours to minutes and process my applications faster, that's awesome. That's what I believe public sector needs to be doing. We will be able to comply with. If there's a regulatory or a legislative requirement to do something, this is really important. And then finally, we'll have more efficient operations. And again, as a CFO, actually, if you look at these in order from top to bottom, it's probably the order of priority that your CFO is probably going to appreciate the conversation. In other words, if you can demonstrate hard cost savings or a process, it's more important than, say, process efficiencies. And if you can quantify them, it's absolutely better for your CFO. Okay, next slide. So this is wrapping it up. I think the most important thing here is, as a project sponsor, it is important when you go to your CFO or to your finance leader that you demonstrate that you understand the value you create. It's not just that you're serving a compliance posture. You are, don't get me wrong, but you're actually making the company more profitable, the enterprise more efficient, the government more responsive, because you're doing your job responsibly. And you can quantify it by articulating a clear benefit and putting an ROI statement together that helps create alignment across the organization, which in turn will create confidence in your recommendation and ultimately in you as a project sponsor. There's an old adage, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, or you manage what you measure. But the important thing is measure what you can to show the impact. Even if it's a few little things that you can say, yes, I said I was going to do this and I did this, this will get you credibility for the next project that you're going to have to sponsor. Because as a former CFO, I can tell you, I remember those people who actually deliver value, and they sort of go to the top of the list in terms of level of confidence in the ROI calculations. And finally, I will offer to all of you this. If you have questions, if you've got a project and you need help thinking through how to think about ROI, give us a call or send us an email at sales@gimmal.com, and our sales team is well equipped. We've got the Excel templates and we've got the know-how to help walk you through your project. Next slide.
Yeah, and if you have any questions for our recovering CFO here, be sure to get those down in the Q&A section on the bottom of our screen. And in the meantime, we've got a quick poll question. If you're interested in learning more about how Gimmal solutions can help you create value and demonstrate ROI, let us know. And like Mark said, we'd be happy to reach out.
All right. So one question, and I don't know if it was tongue in cheek. Let's assume it wasn't. Was what don't you say to your CFO? And so the ones that I obviously said, this is going to make my life easier. Um, as a and I'm a little bit more hardline than some of the other CFOs. I don't want to say they don't care whether your life is easy or not. What they really care about is the returns that you're generating for your constituents. So if you make it about the business and not about yourself, that's always better. And if you can, again, the more you can quantify and demonstrate the number side of it, it will be better. In terms of other things that you don't say to your CFO, I think most CFOs and finance guys are easy to get along with, and I think and if you go at them, if you don't know what to do, always go at them with questions, and I think most of them are willing to help educate, because a well-educated internal constituency is a well-armed employment base.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide here. If you do come up with a question or have anything you'd like to chat with us about, feel free to reference our contact information there on the screen. You can also send us an email at info@gimmal.com or visit our website at www.gimmal.com. For those interested in a recording of this webinar, we will be sending that out between 24 and 48 hours in the form of a thank you email. Again, let us know if you need anything in the meantime, but we hope to see you again for our next webinar next week, Tips for Managing Record Review and Disposition. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, everyone.